wide selection of mirrors on their website, and you can find several at the thrift store. Now, a unique mirror that I just found is this circle mirror. These can be kind of pricey. This one's priced at $19. Let's see if we can turn it into a Pottery Barn dupe. When I was looking online, I found this circle mirror and I loved the gold antique look to it, so that's what we're gonna try to recreate. My circle mirror that I picked up at the thrift store has a perfect frame. To begin this project, I want to tape off my mirror just to protect it so I can add paint. So I'm gonna put a piece of craft paper in the middle, then I'll add painter's tape along the edge. Make sure you get really close underneath the frame whenever you're adding your painter's tape so that you don't have anything you have to clean up after you're done painting. I spray painted 2 coats of a flat black spray paint on the edge of my mirror. Adding black before you start adding in gold is a great way to richen up and give that antique look to any gold that you add to your frame. If you look closely in that Pottery Barn picture, you see a hint of green on that frame. To mimic that look, I used a little bit of a dark green spray paint and I just put it sporadically across my frame. Once the spray paint dried, I got out all of my gold rub and buff colors, and the reason I'm using multiple colors is I feel like it gives it more of an antique look when you layer different gold colors. So the first color I'm using is a copper color, and I'm just using a foam brush to add that to my mirror. Then I'm gonna go back in and remove any excess and kind of blend those colors together with a paper towel. Now you may be wondering how it's turning around. This is actually on my spray paint turntable, which really helps to work on projects. I use it inside and outside. Now, depending on how much of that black color you want to show is going to determine how much gold you put on. You can see here I have a lot of black coming through and I could leave it this way. I'm going to continue to add gold until I like the way the colors are blended. Once the paint's dry, I'm going to remove all of the painter's tape from the center part of my mirror. If you got any paint on the mirror, you can come back in and just scrape that off. And here's a look at how my Pottery Barn dupe turned out. Pottery Barn is definitely known for their vases, and you can dupe these so easily here at the thrift store. Find a vase that's a similar shape to a Pottery Barn vase that you like, and you can do so many different DIYs to it. I think the key to getting an aged vase is doing multiple layers and multiple steps. So you want to start by getting it all one color. So I sprayed the entire piece with the color Sand Dollar. Next, I'm going to mix an ivory and terracotta color. I was trying to get a cream color, so I just mixed these 2 colors together. I added in a little bit of yellow that I had until I got my desired color. I'm going to dip my paint into my brush, then dip it into a little bit of water, wipe off the excess, and then I'm going to brush it onto my vase. The next step is to add the gray dots. In the original one, it had some dots on it, so I'm just going to dab it into my gray and just dot it all around my vase. Now from here, I'm going to let it dry before I continue. Next, I wanted to add a little bit of brown, so I had the color fawn. I'm going to add that to my piece and I'll immediately wipe off any excess. I did add in a little bit of water to make it look smeared. And you're just going to continue to add paint until you're happy with it. If for some reason you get it too dark, come back in with that ivory color to tone it down a bit. When you're finally happy with the way it looks, you want to add in some branches. These are from Hobby Lobby. I'm going to trim them down a bit. I wanted something that was similar to that deep color from the Pottery Barn vase. I found these really cool laminate boxes at Pottery Barn that I want to try to recreate. So I think I'm going to go with this set of boxes, this 2 set, and I also picked up some laminate off of Amazon, so let's put it together. I was able to find burlwood laminate off of Amazon. I did pick up 2 packages for this DIY, and I'll link it for you down in the description box. I removed all the hardware from the back of my boxes. Then I cut out a piece that would exactly cover the top lid of my blue box, and I'm going to pull off the backing and place it in the center. Then I'm going to start with the front edge, tucking it and making sure I don't have any air bubbles. I'll cut off any excess. Now to do the edges, I'm going to tuck them into the side and pull them up. So you're going to tuck in the corners and pull it up so that it makes a nice clean edge. You want to make sure you do both sides before you completely pull it in place. Then you're going to lay it as flat as possible. If you need to add hot glue, that helps as well to hold everything in place. I'm going to repeat those same steps with the bottom half of my box. Starting on the bottom, and then I'll pull it up on the front and the back and then tuck it in to do the sides. And then I'll assemble that box back together. Now this one, I wasn't able to take it apart, so I had to kind of put it on the bottom edge, and then I did the top of the lid. I had to go back in and cut a little bit just to make sure it looked nice. And here's a side-by-side look at both of these boxes. I love finding the decor that nobody wants at the thrift store and turning it into something really useful. These little mini lampshades, look how many there are at my thrift store. Nobody's picking these up. They're only $1 each. So I'm gonna do a DIY with these. Now I'm getting 2 different sizes. This one's a little bit larger than this one. So let's DIY these. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove all of the fabric on these lampshades, which that was easier said than done. I had to use some scissors. I also used my wire cutters, which are always my trusty tool, to take off all of the fabric that was on here. And I repeated that with the other lampshade. After I removed the fabric, I needed to cut off that middle piece that holds the light bulb on. So to do that, I used my wire cutters on both of the edges until I was able to get it off. Next, I'm going to wipe down both of the pieces. If you have any extra fabric or strings, you can always try to sand that off. You want to get it as clean as possible. I'm going to spray paint these lampshade bases with 2 coats of a black matte spray paint. So I'll spray paint one side, flip them over, and spray paint the other side. I'm also going to be using these wood slices that they have out right now at Dollar Tree. Now these come with some hangers on them that have staples that are attached to the wood. So you are going to have to use your wire cutters to pull those out. Next, I'll put E6000 on the top of my wire lampshades, and I'm going to place them on the wood slices, and I'll repeat those with both of my wood slices. Now, if you haven't guessed already, I'm creating risers that you could use for plants. You could also use these for candles or anything to elevate your decor in your home. Pottery Barn has some cool books that you can set out on tables. Now to recreate those, I'm going to pick up some books here in the book section. I also found some light blue and darker blue fabric. You can find curtains, tablecloths, all kinds of things at your thrift store. I removed the dust jacket for each of the books. I'll be using an individual tea bag. I'll place that in water, and then I'm just going to use it to darken the edges of my book. I'll place it along the edge of the book, and then I'll wipe off the excess with a paper towel. And I'll repeat these steps on both of the books. And you've instantly aged your books. I felt like I did a pretty good job of mimicking the colors of the Pottery Barn fabric. I only need a small section of fabric, so I'm going to determine how much I need and cut that off. I also need to remove the hardcover of the book just to make it easier to cover this book. Next, I'll place E6000 along the spine of the book. I'll flip it over and add E6000 to the front and back cover, making sure that the fabric is nice and pulled tight. Now on the inside of the book, I'm going to use hot glue on the 2 long edges. Then I'll fold in the ends and hot glue those in place. Now I did make a mistake by not cutting off that seam. It made it a little bit too bulky when I added the book back in. So if you have any large seams like that, make sure you cut those off. And then I hot glued it to the book. I repeated these steps with my light blue fabric. And here's how they turned out. Large planters can be really expensive, but if you pick them up here at the thrift store, you can usually get them for under $20, and they need a little bit of DIY to get them ready for your home. I found this ceramic pot at the thrift store. You're not gonna believe it, it was only $4.50. But I wasn't a fan of the color of it, so I needed to update that. So I started by spray painting this pot. I went with a really neutral tan color just to give me an even color throughout the entire piece. I did it on one side, and then I also flipped it to the other side and spray painted the bottom. Once that dried, I came in with the color amber. This is a sea glass spray paint, and what that means is it's just going to be a little bit more transparent, which is cool because you're still going to be able to see that tan color underneath, but you're going to get a little bit of a terracotta tint to it. I grabbed some Waverly white paint and I mixed it with some water. I brushed it onto my pot and then I immediately wiped it off with a paper towel. This gave me the look that I was going for. I absolutely love the color of it. I grabbed this eucalyptus plant off of Amazon, which I think is perfect for this planter. To put it in my planter, I added pieces of foam that I had left over on hand. I also put a piece of plastic at the top, and I finished off the top with some moss that I grabbed at Dollar Tree. One tip, you guys, is when you get plants like this, they're gonna come squished up. Make sure you put your hands on every single branch and pull the pieces apart. Yes, I spent a little bit more on the plant, but you would have no idea that that planter was only $4.50. So I have a crazy idea. I want to recreate this magazine rack. I know it's going to be tricky, but over here at my thrift store, look down here, you guys, there's so many different magazine racks. I found this one. It's priced at $12. It's similar in shape, but I got to figure out a way to create that cross pattern. So what I did was I went over and found some like faux suede material. This is around $6. I also found this faux suede jacket for $9. It's a crazy idea. Let's see if it works. I gotta be honest with you guys, I thought this project was totally gonna fail, but honestly it was one of my favorite projects in the entire video. So this leather piece in the middle was screwed into both sides. So I unscrewed it from one side and then I just cut it off the other side. And you can see it's placed on there with some dowels. With the wood piece, I need to clean it up. I wanted to keep it black because I was trying to be very true to the inspiration piece from Pottery Barn, but it kind of had this red tint to it. So I just sprayed it with 2 coats of a matte black spray paint. Now the leather piece, I'm going to be using this as my template. The problem I ran into is the pieces of suede that I picked up at the thrift store weren't large enough, so I kind of had to work with that. This piece seemed to be the largest, so this was going to be my base template. So I'm just going to trace around this piece and make it the exact same size as the leather that was already on there. And then I'll cut that out. I created straight lines on the edge so I knew exactly where I wanted to cut. Then using this really cool ruler that I picked up at Dollar Tree, I'm going to draw straight lines because I'm going to come back in and cut these off. Now I needed some cross pieces that would go the other direction, so I'm going to be using this jacket. This jacket wasn't big enough, so I ended up having to use not only the arms of it, but I also had to use the backing piece. So right now I'm just kind of disassembling it so I can use that suede back piece since that was the largest one. So I want to cut strips out with this, so I made sure that it was as long as my piece, and then I'm going to use that same ruler to create long strips. And then I'll cut out the strips. I'll also cut along my base template. Next, we're going to do a simple weaving project. So I will go every other strip and pull that up, place one of my other strips in there, and then I hot glued each of them down just to kind of hold everything in place. Then I'll place those strips down and then alternate the other strips, pulling those up and placing them down. I'll keep adding strips until I get to the other side. I'm going to cut off the strips on the edge and then I'll hot glue those down. And I'll repeat those steps on the other side. Now it's time to hot glue to the dowel rod so I can hang it on my magazine rack. I'm going to wrap it on the dowel that's already up there, and then I'll add hot glue to hold it in place. And then with my dowel rod on the other side, I'll just screw that back in place. I also added in some black rub and buff to the wood frame. And here's how the dupe turned out.
So we haven't gone outside before, but our restore has all of these outdoor tiles. I found these sink bases, you guys. Now they're $50 each, which is a little bit pricey, but how gorgeous would this be as a bowl that you could have on your coffee table? So I just found these square tiles. They have this really cool pattern on them. I'm thinking we can make a wall art out of these. I'll put the price of how much they were because I'm not really sure exactly how much these cost.
So these tiles were pretty interesting. Originally, I thought I was going to make them into wall art, but as I was working with them, I thought they would make a really cool tray. So I cleaned them off and put them next to each other. Next, I wanted to create a frame. So I had this in my garage. It was just a small piece of wood trim. I measured the wood pieces so that they would fit snugly around my tile pieces. Next, I'm going to use E6000 and put that along the edges of my tile pieces. And then I'm going to place the tile pieces together. Next, I'm going to use E6000 to add my wood trim to the edges. I cut 2 long pieces to put on the edge to finish off the frame. Once you cut your boards with the hacksaw, you may want to come in with some sandpaper to make sure you clean up the edges. And I'll use E6000 to attach these pieces to my tray. Now with E6000, you want to make sure you let it sit and dry overnight. Once it had a chance to dry, I came back in the next day, flipped it over, and added additional E6000 to the backside. Just because these are tile and they're a little bit heavy, you want to make sure that they hold in place well. And this is how I styled the tray on my coffee table.
These little square tiles would make great coasters. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. Comment the word of the day, which is thrifting. Before I blow away, I had to tell you guys the awesome prices these tiles were. Now this large tile was $1. These smaller tiles, this one was only 34 cents and I got 4 of them. These coaster tiles were only 6 cents, 24 cents for all 4. Like that's less than a quarter, such a good deal. Lamps can be really pricey and they're a great thing to dupe at the thrift store. I spotted this one. Now it's a smaller lamp, but this style with the round base is really in. It's only $4, let's DIY. I have to say this DIY probably turned out as one of my favorites. So I started by just kind of taking everything apart. Then I taped up the cord. I also taped up the top portion because I was going to start by spray painting it to get it all one color. I'm going to be using a light cream spray paint color on the entire piece, and I only did 1 coat. If you look at the Pottery Barn lamp, it has a marble texture to it. So to achieve that, you need a container filled with water, and then I'm going to use white spray paint and I'll just spray it on top of the water. Then you're going to take your lamp and dip it down into the water. Pull it straight up, and then you'll continue to rotate your lamp and dip it down. If you need to add in more paint, you can do that as well. Look at how this technique creates a fun marble texture. Now, because I had a color underneath that was really light and I'm using white, it's very subtle. Now, if you have a dingy lampshade, you can use chalk paint or acrylic paint to give it new life. I recommend doing 2 coats and apply that with your brush. I'm gonna remove all the excess paper and assemble my lamp back together. How adorable is this? And it looks so much like the Pottery Barn one. All right, this is cool. This mimics a lot of that texture that we're seeing right now. This piece, I don't even know what this is supposed to be, but it's only $15. I definitely think we can turn this into a Pottery Barn dupe. I'm thinking this is going to make a perfect plant stand. So I started by removing those handles that were on the side. I used my hacksaw. I also used a pair of wire cutters to kind of pull off those nails. It came off fairly well. I did have to use some additional sandpaper to smooth down that edge. If you see along the top, I have some nail holes, so I wanted to fill that up with some putty. So I'm just going to use my scraper and add that putty anywhere that you see the nail holes. Once that had a chance to dry, I'll smooth it down with some sandpaper. My plant stand that we're trying to replicate is a dark gray color. I had a sample paint of dark gray that I thought would work perfectly. So I'm going to add 2 coats of paint to this entire piece. And I'll style it in my home with a plant that I already had.
All right, what are you looking at?
So I'm trying to find a cutting board, you guys. I want it to have feet. This one actually might work. It has some good feet to it. I have a technique I want to try that's going to make this look like Pottery Barn. The first step for this cutting board is to take it outside and use my orbital sander. I want to get off all of the finish off the top of this so it's down to its natural wood state. And I find using this orbital sander makes the job a lot easier. I'll link to the one that I use down below. Now, if you look at my inspiration picture, you're going to notice that there's several different colors of stain. So to mimic that look, I'm going to be using a dark and light stain. Now, the light stain I'm going to put throughout my entire piece. Then I'll come in with my dark stain and just blot it down, and then I'll wipe the 2 stains together. Now, after you do this, step back and look at it and see if you want to add in any additional dark stain. I thought I could use a little bit deeper of a stain, so I actually got out an even darker stain and added that to the edges sporadically. Now let this dry completely. So to make it really look like Pottery Barn, I want to put that glass on my tray. I found this one for under 50 cents. You can find so much glassware at your thrift store for usually under $1. After I scrape off the tag, I'm going to spray paint this jar. I'm going to go in with the color white. This is just going to give me a great base to start this piece.
The Pottery Barn piece had a mixture of colors, so I'm going to be using an ivory color to spray along the edges, not covering up completely the white that I just put on. Once that dried, you could see the multi-dimension of colors, but we're going to take it a step further using a sponge paint technique, and I'm going to add some browns. I also have a coppery color, and then I have a cream color that's very similar. I'm going to sponge that on till I'm happy with the look. I picked up a plant in my local nursery, and I'm going to plant that in my container. And here's the two side by side.
Pottery Barn has a ton of baskets and you can find so many of them at your local thrift store. Check out this one. The shape on it is perfect. And that's the thing, you guys, if you can find a good shape, you can totally paint it and add to it to recreate it. This one's gonna be perfect to DIY.
Looking at my inspo pick from Pottery Barn, it's definitely a darker wood. Now, did you know that you can stain your baskets? I'm going to come in with a medium stain, and using a foam brush, I'm just going to place the stain onto my basket. Now, you really don't have to wipe away too much of the excess here, but using a foam brush I find is the best technique to kind of get all the stain onto your piece. Now in my inspo pick, they had wrapped handles. Now my handles were a little bit smaller, so I'm gonna use some nautical rope to bulk up my handles. So I will cut off a piece of nautical rope and hot glue it to my already existing handles. The next thing I'm going to do is use a little bit thinner of a nautical rope that I picked up off Amazon. I'll link it for you down below. And I'm going to wrap it around the handles. I'll add hot glue maybe every other time that I wrap it around, and make sure you add enough hot glue to the last piece. I'll repeat these steps on the other side. If you've never tried staining your baskets before, it's a great way to give new life to old baskets.
One of the most obvious items to pick up at the thrift store is furniture. You can get some great quality pieces, wood furniture, unique items, sand them, paint them, stain them. There's so many things you can do.
So I was so excited to find this coffee table. You guys know that this like bevel detail is so in right now. It's so popular. And I realized it fit as far as like width, but it was way too high. So I needed to cut off 5 inches from this coffee table. I'm using 2 coats of ink by Waverly on the entire coffee table. I know my kids are gonna have their feet on here. I wanted to make it nice and sealed. So I'm gonna be using a water-based sealer. And here's a look at how everything turned out. And this all started with a $12 coffee table.
Over here in the glassware section, I have a Pottery Barn dupe for these glass containers.
All right, I have to say, you guys, this one did not turn out the exact way that I wanted it to, but I'm going to kind of show you what I did and tell you what I'd change for next time. So I needed a base to put my Quikrete in for this. So I got 3 lemonade containers because I needed something pretty long, and I'm gonna put one in the center, and then I taped them up. I felt like this was a good idea, but the problem with this was it wasn't completely flat along the center. So I did have some of those lines whenever I took it out of the mold. If you guys have any suggestions for a better mold that I could do, I would love your suggestions. Next, I mixed up Quikrete and water. I will say for this project, I needed quite a bit of Quikrete, so I had to buy a larger one. I wasn't able to mix it all up at once. I continued to add and mix, and then I tried to move it around so it was nice and flat. Then I took some painter's tape to hold it together. Then I placed my glass containers into the mold, and I tried to make them as level as possible. I was able to get 5 in the container. I let this sit overnight. The next day, I removed the outside container. Now you could see that you're able to see those lines. I also felt like on the edges, it kind of went down and it didn't stay as level as I wanted it to. So I came in and tried to sand it down to get it as nice and even as possible. I cleaned up all of my jars and I added in some candles. Although it's not perfect, I do feel like it's similar to the Pottery Barn piece. I feel like for the future, I just need to find a better mold. Maybe I could use a cardboard box that was the correct size. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think.
One of the bigger trends we're noticing right now are blue and white dishes, pottery. We're seeing it in vases at Pottery Barn and other stores. And here at my thrift store, they have so many dishes in that blue and white color scheme. So I want to do a DIY with these, maybe something beautiful in my kitchen. I'm finding several really pretty teacups priced at around $1 or $2. This one's $1.50. So I want to make a tray. So I found this blue and white plate that I'm going to use to make kind of a pedestal tray, and I'll show you how I put it all together.
I'm going to start by spray painting my base just with 2 coats of a matte white spray paint. Once that dried, I removed all of the labels from my cups and my plates, and I'm going to use E6000 to attach the base to my plate. Just make sure when you put your plate on that you try to get it as centered as possible. Again, let this sit overnight. E6000 needs that time to bond. I picked up 3 different herb plants that I could keep out in my kitchen, and I'm just going to plant those into my blue and white cups. This is the perfect piece to put out in your kitchen, on your countertop, and anytime you need fresh herbs, they'll be available.
So there's this decor section over at my Restore, and I was looking at the pictures and the lamps. Found this lamp, you guys. This is a really modern style lamp. I know I've seen something very similar on high-end sites. They want $10 for it. We're gonna get it, update the paint, and it's gonna look completely brand new.
With everything I pick up at the thrift store, I always have to clean it really well, and this lamp was no exception. So I came through and wiped it down really well. Next, I needed to prep it for spray paint. The area where the light bulb goes in, I'm just going to tape that up. And then for the cord, I'm going to tape that. I'll put the rest of the cord in a sack and I'll just add tape around it. I'm going to spray paint the entire lamp with an ivory colored spray paint. I wanted this lamp to have a lot of texture to it, so I came in with a multicolored texture spray that was in a similar color family with the ivory. Next, I added in a stone texture spray. When you use this, you have to make sure you have a color underneath. This will give your piece a stone appearance, and you really don't need to add that much. After that, I removed the tape and sack from my lamp. And here's how the lamp looks styled in my home.
Two things we see a lot of at Pottery Barn are the scallop edges on their bowls, and a lot of the bowls also have feet on them. So we found this piece. It's $8 here at my thrift store, but it's got both of those, so we're definitely going to create this into a Pottery Barn dupe.
I'm always blown away by the cool bowls that I'm able to find at my thrift store. I absolutely love this one. So I want to mimic that color we saw in the Pottery Barn one. So I had a terracotta color, but I felt like it was a little too dark. So I'm gonna add in some white paint and mix that together. I'm gonna paint the bottom of my bowl. And then I'll flip that over and paint the inside. Now, when I paint like this on a bowl, you're definitely gonna have to do 2 coats. After I painted 2 coats, I let both of those coats dry. If you notice on the Pottery Barn bowl, it kind of has a white cast to it. So I mixed some white paint with a little bit of that terracotta, and I'm going to come in with a wet brush, and I'm just going to brush it on the edge of my bowl. And then I'm gonna use my paper towel to kind of wipe off the excess. I wanna give it that look of the white streaky lines, so I'll do that all over the bowl. And here's the 2 side by side. There's so many different tile options here at the Restore. They're usually discarded tiles or ones they can't sell. I really like these. I think these would make perfect like bases for a project that I want to do. They come in a bunch of different finishes. Now the only problem is they say they only sell them by the box. Sorry for all the noise. At the other Restore that we shop at, they sell them individually. So I'm gonna see if I can just buy one of them, but I may not be able to. So next I want to check out the light fixtures. That's another one of my favorite sections, but I have an idea in mind for a centerpiece that I want to try out. So let's go see what they have in the light fixture section. You can find really modern options like this one for affordable prices. Like this light fixture right here is only $20 and they actually have 2 of them. But the thing I'm gonna be looking at today are the light shades. Now these are priced at just $1 each, and you may be wondering like, what am I going to do with these? These are gonna make some perfect planters. So I wanna find 3 that I love. I think of all the ones that I'm looking at, these are my favorite, and I'm gonna put them over here on my tile to see what they're gonna look like. I think I wanna pick up 3. So let's DIY this.
With my tile, I'm going to add a little bit of finishing detail to the edges because it has those rough tile edges. So I'm going to be using a gold rub and buff color and just apply it on with a foam brush. So I have my dollar lampshades that I'm going to use. And since they have the hole at the bottom, I'm going to add in these Dollar Tree plastic containers to make sure nothing goes out that bottom opening. Then I'm going to be adding in some Dollar Tree rocks that I have. You could see that I'm just using ones that I already had in my collection. I have some white ones as well as these kind of multicolored neutral ones. I picked up these florals at Hobby Lobby, and I'm going to cut off the bottom stem so that they're a little bit shorter, and then I'll add one into each of my containers. Once I got the plants in place, I added in a little bit more rocks, and I'll style these on the tile piece on my dining room table.
Lamps are another item that are a great dupe for high-end decor, and most thrift stores have a ton to choose from. If you can find a set, that's even better.
Okay, these are such a good deal. $10 each. The lampshades are a great deal. I love the shape of them. I may want to update this, but man, you cannot beat $10 for a lamp in great condition. I really didn't need to do much to these lamps, but I wanted to update them so they were a little bit more modern. I removed the lampshades and then I used my frog tape to tape off the top portion of the lamp. Now with the bottom, I spray painted the bottom half with 2 coats of an ultra matte spray paint. Once that dried, I removed my painter's tape and then I came in with some rub and buff along the top edge. All I did was take a foam brush and I painted that on to the top half of my lamp. Once that dried, I added back in my lampshades because they were in great condition and no one would be able to guess that these lamps were only $10 each.
When you're out thrifting, don't be intimidated by a dingy lampshade like this one because you can always paint it and bring it back to life.
I'm gonna use a stippling brush, but honestly, you could probably use any brush. I found a white sample paint that I had. I added a little bit of water to it and mixed it up. I simply did 2 coats all over this lampshade. You can see this lampshade is dingy, it's old, it's like probably, I don't know, 40 years old, and it just needed some new life. It definitely needed 2 coats, so if you're gonna do this, do 2 coats, but this turned an old lampshade into a completely new.
Looking through the frames, there's a tortoise shell frame on Pottery Barn. I'm wondering if I can paint it to look like that. We'll try it out.
So when starting this frame, I looked online for different tortoise shell inspiration. I didn't think I was going to be able to do the exact Pottery Barn one, but I was going to try to make it look like a tortoise shell. So to do that, I needed to paint it all one color. So I went in with this cream ivory sample paint. You guys, I buy sample paints in all different colors and they're really inexpensive. I find that's just the easiest way to get paint. When you're doing tortoiseshell, you want to start with kind of a coppery color. I started by dabbing it on with my paintbrush and then I came in with the sponge. Next, you want to go in with more of a fine detail brush and you're going to add on your black. You do want to definitely go in and sponge your black as well to make it look very blended. I have to say, when I was doing this, I'm like, I don't know if this looks tortoiseshell or tiger striped, but I was kind of liking it. I felt like I needed to mute it down a bit. So I came back in with that cream color. I'm going to go back and forth between my sponge and my paintbrush, adding additional color. Until I was happy with the look of it, I put in a picture of my family, and here's how the frame turned out. Not the exact same, but I really like it and think it's a fun paint technique.